and Senate adjourned as of this afternoon until next January. At least that's when the next regular session of this legislature is set to begin. Before that, we saw the 46-14 vote to override the governor's veto of House Bill 57, the education funding bill. And as you might expect, varying opinions on that override. The House Majority Coalition, for example, calling the override a victory for Alaska's students, educators, and communities, saying the move this morning reaffirms the legislature's commitment to providing a quality public education for every Alaskan child and upholds the clear will of the people. The governor also reacting, but saying the bill itself, quote, fundamentally missed the mark for Alaska's students, end quote. Here's a portion of the governor's prepared statement that was released after the vote. He says, I vetoed this bill because we cannot keep rewarding a system that resists accountability, innovation, and choice. Adding money without demanding results does a disservice to students, teachers, and Alaska's future. He also says the override does not end the conversation, but instead, he says, it raises the stakes. An interesting note at the end there, and we now bring in Alaska Beacon's James Brooks, who's been covering the legislature for years. James, that comment that the override of the veto of HB 57 raises the stakes. What do you make of that?
It definitely indicates that the governor might veto some of the funding that's designed to fulfill the new formula that lawmakers approved today. As always, the governor has line item veto power, and now that legislators have finished the budget, he could end up reducing the amount of money that goes into that new formula. And there's also a separate bill, Senate Bill 113, that funds a portion of the education bill dealing with reading grants. The governor could veto that as well, and we'll be keeping an eye on that as it comes up.
So a state budget did pass today, one day ahead of that constitutional deadline for the regular session and allowing lawmakers to adjourn. What can you tell us about the permanent fund dividend for this year and any other standout items within that budget? I know you did just mention that line item veto power as well.
Yes, this year's permanent fund dividend will be $1,000. It's specifically written in there. It's whatever it costs to pay that $1,000 dividend for every recipient. The budget otherwise, though, was very slim. It does not have a lot of extras in it. No legislator got construction projects for their individual districts, so very little money in that regard. Little money was added for grants to nonprofits and things like that. There was a handful of things, some mental health treatment there for the homeless in Anchorage, as well as $5.5 million for children's services designed to help children affected by domestic violence and abuse.
A lot contained in there. How do you see the governor proceeding over the next few days? I mean, he could call a special session if he wants, right? Any projections there?
It doesn't seem, and legislators don't expect that the governor will call a special session this year. Legislators themselves are not planning to call themselves into special session, but there are a large number of significant bills that would come up in January and potentially arise to the level of a governor's veto at that point, looking ahead to a pension bill potentially next year, some tax measures even next year.
Okay, last question real quick. With this being the first of two regular sessions for this legislature, bills that didn't get to the finish line by now, they aren't necessarily dead. What bills are you expecting to potentially carry over to next January?
Right. In addition to the pension bill that I mentioned, I'm looking at elections reform that didn't make it to the finish line this year, and also campaign finance limits on the amount of money that somebody can donate to a political candidate. That's slated for a ballot measure next year. Lawmakers could short circuit the process and start those limits early. They didn't this year. They could in January.
All right, James Brooks with the Alaska Beacon, thank you for your time tonight. We look forward to hopefully having you join us again later in the week.